So the number one thing that I want you all to understand as we're diving into, I guess, these topics around optimization and SEO, and then even furthermore, when we dive into the Airbnb demo, is just similar to every other social media platform. Airbnb is really at its core nothing but a search engine, nothing but a search engine, meaning that you're going on there, you're searching for houses in different locations, et cetera, et cetera. But the same way that you can go on Facebook and you can search for a person, the same way that you can go on Instagram and do that very same thing, and it's going to show different profiles. That is what Airbnb is. So that is why we care about optimization in what's called search engine optimization, because that is what's going to help us to improve or maximize our earnings that we have. And even furthermore, just those views and bookings. So what is SEO? SEO is search engine optimization. So it's really the process of just organically increasing the views, traffic, impressions of your website. And for you all, in this case, this is your listing. So SEO is typically talked about a lot when you have a website and you're looking to show up better on Google search results, Yahoo search results. In this case, you all have a listing and we are looking for you to show up in the best way in those search results on Airbnb. So our primary goal as hosts is to, number one, really just work toward 100% booking and occupancy rate, because this is the factor that really boosts your SEO. A lot of the time people try to make their primary goal of, okay, I want to make X amount of dollars in the first month. You want to maximize your earnings, when really you should be working to maximizing your earnings is a very different goal than saying, I want to get to 100% occupancy rate. That is very different, because you can have a 100% occupancy rate and you only made about $2,000 that month. But our goal is, in the same breath that we're increasing that occupancy rate, we're also making sure that our pricing strategy that we have in place is actually going to cover our monthly expenses. But that 100% booking occupancy is going to show Airbnb that this is a listing that a lot of people are interested in, not that most people are just willing to pay for. And that's the difference there. So really, when you're looking at boosting your SEO, it's going to increase your views, it's going to increase your bookings, and of course, it is going to increase your earnings, and all of these tie within one another. So the first thing that I want us to do, number one, is just look at some factors that are actually going to hinder your SEO performance. And these are things that sometimes many hosts just don't know and don't understand, because they're parameters that you can have in place. And sometimes Airbnb encourages you to have them in place, but they're hindering your actual, I guess, ranking within those search results on Airbnb. So that first and that number one hindrance is actually having incomplete listing details, meaning that you do not have the recommended number of photos. You might have only 7 photos of your space up, or you might have 52. Both of those are either too little or too much. And you need to optimize that. So we'll talk about that. But everything related to your photos, your categories, and then of course, these amenities that you have. Number two, when we're looking at what hinders it, not actually taking advantage of this instant book feature. And for some of you, you may not take advantage of it, right? Because for some of my listings, I have it in there. Some of them I do not, but it's really based on where I am at, right? For my own house, I can have an instant booking, because if someone wants, for instance, right now, they book the house to check in today, tonight, they absolutely can do that, because I don't have to run any background checks. I don't have to do any of that, because it's my house. Nobody is actually setting any parameters around how I am renting it. However, if it's an apartment, then maybe that instant book is not going to be in place, because they're requiring you to do a background check, and you might need at least 72 hours notice before a guest checks in and tries to stay at your unit. So not taking advantage of instant book is actually one that could hurt you. Minimum stay requirements, again, just because they can hurt you doesn't mean sometimes that we should not have them in place. I do have minimum stay requirements in place for some of my units as well. It hinders it, but again, it's what works for my business model. So actually having it to where someone has to stay 14 or 20 days, of course, that is going to hinder how you are going to show up in those search results, because obviously someone who is needing to stay a 2 or 3 day stay, you're not going to show up. So that is why it hinders your SEO performance. Number 4 is booking lead time, meaning how much time before someone actually books are you giving them? So how much time can someone just book in advance for you? Everyone. Okay. And then number 5 is really that cancellation policy. So depending on your cancellation policy, of course, this is going to hinder your search engine optimization performance as well. Because many people, and I'm sure if you all you take off your host hat and you put on your guest hat, you'll also understand why if you see a space or a listing with a strict cancellation policy, you might stay away from there because you don't know what's going on within the next couple of weeks, whether or not you'll need to cancel. So that cancellation policy, that is how that plays into your SEO performance, because most people are going to filter on that flexible cancellation policy, meaning they can cancel up until the day that they get there. However, if we switch it back to the host hat, you already know that as a host, the most terrible thing that you could do is have that flexible cancellation policy, because at that point, someone can have your days blocked off for 14 days straight. And when it's time for them to check in, they cancel, they get all of their money back and you get nothing. And now you still have to figure out how to make up for those days. So that's how that cancellation policy also plays into that SEO performance too. Now, let's look at some factors that are actually going to help your SEO performance. And we're going to go through these when we actually do the demo as well. So number one is going to be your inquiry or message response time, meaning that you want to aim for like 90+% of messages and inquiries you're responding to within 24 hours or as immediately as you can, as soon as you can. Those hosts, and this is actually a metric that shows up on your host profile that shows other guests, okay, if I reach out and I have an inquiry, is that's going to take 2 days to respond? Or are they going to respond within the next hour? Again, that is a metric that shows up on your host profile. Number two, the number of booking requests that you accept versus the booking requests that you decline. Obviously, right, again, we have to step out of our own frame of thinking and our own perception. Looking at it from Airbnb's perspective, if they are consistently showing your listing and then now people are requesting to book, but you cancel, I don't know, 3 or 4 people in a row because you're a new host and you see that, I don't know, they might not have any reviews, so you're just declining them. When you continuously decline them, Airbnb is going to stop recommending your listing to so many people. So that is why we have to be very careful about who we're accepting versus who we're declining. And if we are, I guess, encouraged, not encouraged, but there's something giving us some type of notification that we should decline a guest, reach out and ask them about it. And then number 3, actually host cancellations. So whenever you cancel as a host, you want to just keep those cancellations that you have down, meaning that you are not canceling as a host, but you're actually requesting for the guest to cancel. There are many times that a guest is going to reach out to you and they're going to ask you, hey, I'm actually looking to change my dates, or hey, we can no longer do this. Can you cancel our reservation? You as a host never want to do it from your end, even when it is an instance where you need to cancel because you can no longer accommodate them. You always want to make it to where the cancellation isn't coming from you. It's either coming from Airbnb directly or it's coming from the guest. So to just give you an example of this, just about 2 weeks ago, we had an issue within one of the houses. So the sink, there was a leak going on. And at that point, we had guests checking in that Friday. Obviously, they could not check in with that leak going on because we needed to get a plumber in there to get it fixed and remediated. I could have easily, if, again, I did not know this information, I could have easily just went on there and maybe asked the guests to cancel, and they could easily refuse. Absolutely. But I could have then said, you know what, I just got to chuck it up and I'm going to cancel it myself. Rather than doing that, actually picking up the phone and giving Airbnb a call is what you want to do in that scenario, because Airbnb ended up being able to cancel the reservation on their end, meaning that I did not receive a penalty on my account at that point. But when they canceled on their end, they can then help the guest find another unit to actually stay in for that time. And then even furthermore, again, that penalty is just not in place on my profile. That is the main piece that we really want to avoid, because in essence, Airbnb only allows you 1 cancellation as a host per calendar year. Okay, now looking at just some ways that we're able to hack the SEO performance, meaning again, search engine optimization. How do we best show up within the Airbnb search results? Number 1 is just really being creative and strategic with your listing title. So we're going to talk about it a bit when we go through the demo, but if you read the Airbnb Money ebook, you'll see this information as well. Typically, you'll see that most Airbnb titles are going to start with some type of adjective, go into the location, and then talk about the unit type, and they may say something about a key amenity. So at that point, this is going to be, just to give you an example, charming midtown apartment with king bed. that is typically the type of titles that we're seeing on Airbnb. Charming is that adjective, Midtown is obviously the location, and then unit type is apartment, spacious apartment at that. And then adding in that key amenity is also helpful because it gives people just a quick glimpse at, okay, what does this unit have to offer before they even click your listing. Another way to hack that SEO performance is actually creating listing wish lists for your units, meaning that if someone's saying, okay, I want to visit Georgia, you are now creating a wish list of top listings or places or Airbnb units in, I don't know, North Georgia or outside of Atlanta. And you are creating that wish list with your listing on there, because those wish lists actually show up on Google via Airbnb. So they are going to show up. So someone who's looking for best places to stay in Long Beach, that is where they're going to go. That is what's going to show up within those search results. Creating a Facebook business page for your rental business. Some of you have mentioned this already, of whether or not you should really tap into social media with this. It's completely up to you, but it does not hurt, is what I will say. It's, again, just more eyes on your listing. Keeping your activity up to date within the Airbnb platform. My recommendation is to always go in once you all get your listings published and you get to that point, make changes to your listing information and your pricing like every few days, if not every other day. The more activity that Airbnb is seeing on your listing, meaning that you're going in and you're probably responding to reviews, you're responding to messages, you're changing and kind of recalibrating your title, your photos, or what have you, that is then going to show increased activity, meaning that you are a more active host, and that is going to bump your listing up within that SEO. And then, of course, just including photos of amenities. I've mentioned this before, but don't just take photos of the space. If you have a breakfast bar, take photos of that. You got a pool, take photos of that. If a Keurig machine, because that's something that typically most people who are like corporate workers are looking for, that may be something that you want to take a picture of, just so that, again, if they do not even get to the listing details, they are going to see that within the listing photos. So when we do the demo, we're going to talk about just in terms of attention, where most people, and even yourself, when you're looking for Airbnb units and just any short-term rental unit, where do your eyes go? You're first going to look at that cover photo and that title, then you're going to look at the photos, and then you're going to look at the listing details. But if I lose you at any of those previous steps, you don't see any of that. So that is why it's so important for us to integrate all of them together. And then, of course, just using bullets and lists to break out paragraphs within your listing descriptions and all of that. You'll see what I mean by that when we go through our demo as well.